Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 817th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Manar al-Sana was about to set out upon the journey, behold, a chamberlain of the king, her sire, came into her, and kissing the ground before her, said, O princess, the supreme king thy father saluteth thee, and biddeth thee to him. So she rose and accompanied the chamberlain to learn what was required by her father, who seated her by his side on the couch, and said to her, O my daughter, know that I have this night had a dream which maketh me fear for thee, and that long sorrow will betide thee from this thy journey. Quoth she, How so, O my father, and what didst thou see in thy dream? And quoth he, I dreamed that I entered a hidden hoard, wherein was a great store of moneys, of jewels, and jacinths, and other riches. But 'twas if naught pleased me of all these treasures and jewelry, save 7 bezels, which were the finest things there. I chose out one of the 7 jewels, for it was the smallest, finest, and most lustrous of them, and its water pleased me. So I took it in my hand palm, and fared forth of the treasure. When I came without the door, I opened my hand, rejoicing, and turned over the jewel, when, behold, there swooped down on me out of the welkin a strange bird from a far land, for it was not of the birds of our country, and snatching it from my hand, returned, and with it whence it came. Whereupon sorrow and concern and sore vexation overcame me, and my exceeding chagrin so troubled me that I awoke, mourning and lamenting for the loss of the jewel. At once, on awaking, I summoned the interpreters and expounders of dreams, and declared to them my dream. And they said to me, Thou hast 7 daughters, the youngest of whom thou wilt lose, and she will be taken from thee perforce without thy will. Now thou, O my girl, art the youngest and dearest of my daughters, and the most affectionate of them to me. And look ye, thou art about to journey to thy sister, and I know not what may befall thee from her. So go thou not, but return to thy palace. But when the princess heard her father's words, her heart fluttered, and she feared for her children, and bent earthwards her head awhile. Then she raised it, and said to her sire, O king, Queen Nur al-Huda hath made ready for me an entertainment, and awaiteth my coming to her hour by hour. These 4 years she hath not seen me. If I delay to visit her, she will be wroth with me. The utmost of my stay with her shall be a month, and then I will return to thee. Besides, who is the mortal who can travel our land and make his way to the islands of Wak? Who can gain access to the White Country in the Black Mountain, and come to the land of Camphor and Castle of Crystal? And how shall he traverse the Island of Birds, and the Wadi of Wild Beasts, and the Valley of the Jan, and enter our islands? If any stranger come hither, he would be drowned in the seas of destruction. So be of good cheer, and eyes without a tear, and at my journey, for none may avail to tread our earth. And she ceased not to persuade him, till he deigned gave her the right to leave. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 818th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the princess ceased not to persuade him, till he deigned give her leave to depart, and bade 1,000 horse escort her to the river, and abide there till she entered her sister's city and palace, and returned to them, when they should take her and carry her back to him. Moreover, he charged her tarry with her sister but 2 days, and returned to him in haste, and she answered, Hearing and obedience. Then rising up, she went forth, and he with her, and farewelled her. Now his word had sunk deep into her heart, and she feared for her children. But it availeth not to fortify herself by any device against the onset of destiny. So she set out and fared on diligently 3 days, till she came to the river, and pitched her tents on its bank. Then she crossed the stream with some of her counselors, pages, and suite, and going up to the city and the palace, went in to Queen Nur al-Huda, with whom she found her children, who ran to her weeping and crying out, O our father! At this the tears railed from her eyes, and she wept. Then she strained them to her bosom, saying, What? Have you seen your sire at this time, when the hour had never been, and which I left him? If I knew him to be in the house of the world, I would carry you to him. Then she bemoaned herself and her husband and her children, weeping and reciting these couplets. My friends, despite this distance and this cruelty, I pine for you, incline to you where'er you may be. My glance for ever turns towards hearth and home, and mourns my heart the bygone days you wand with me. How many a night foregathered we without fear, one loving, one faithful, ever fain and free. When her sister saw her fold her children to her bosom, saying, "'Tis I who have done thus with myself and my children, and have ruined my own house," she saluted her not, but said to her, "O whore, whence hadst thou these children? Say, hast thou married unbeknown to thy sire, or hast thou committed fornication? And thou have played the piece, it behoveth thou by exemplary punished, and if thou have married sans our knowledge, why didst thou abandon thy husband, and separate thy sons from thy sire, and bring them hither?" And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 819th night, she continued, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that quoth Nur al-Huda, the queen, to her sister Manar al-Sana, the princess, and thou have married sans our knowledge, why didst thou abandon thy husband, and separate thy sons from their sire, and bring them to our land? Thou hast hidden thy children from us. Thinkest thou we know not of this? Allah Almighty, He who is cognizant of the concealed, hath made known to us thy case, and revealed thy condition, and bared thy nakedness." Then she bade her guards seize her, and pinion her elbows, and shackle her with shackles of iron. So they did as they commanded, and she beat her with grievous beating, so that her skin was torn, and hanged her up by the hair. After which she cast her into prison, and wrote the king her father a writ acquainting her with the case, saying, "There hath appeared in our land a man, a mortal, by the name of Hassan, and our sister Manar al-Sana avouched that she lawfully married to him, and bare him 2 sons, whom she hath hidden from us and thee. Nor did she discover aught of herself, till there came to us this man, and informed us that he wedded her, and she tarried with him a long while. After which she took her children and departed without his knowledge, bidding as she went his mother tell her son, when as longing began to rack to come to her at the island of Wak. So we laid hands on the man, and sent the old woman Shawahai to fetch her and her offspring, enjoining her to bring us the children in advance of her. And she did so, whilst Manar al-Sana equipped herself and set out to visit me. When the boys were brought to me, and ere the mother came, I sent for Hassan, the mortal who claimeth her to wife, and he, on entering, and at first sight, knew them, and they knew him, whereby was I certified that the children were indeed his children, and that she was his wife. And I learned that the man's story was true, and he was not to blame, but that the reproach and the infamy rested with my sister. Now I feared the rending of our honor veil before the folk of our isle, so with this wanton the traitoress came into me. I was incensed against her, and cast her into prison, and bastinoed her grievously, and hanged her up by her hair. Before, I have acquainted thee with her case, and it is thine to command, and whatso thou orderest us that we will do. Thou knowest that in this affair is dishonor and disgrace to our name and to thine, and haply islanders will hear of it, and we shall become strangers amongst by byword. Wherefore it beseemeth thee to return us an answer with all speed." Then she delivered the letter to a courier, and he carried it to the king, who, when he read it, was wroth with exceeding wrath with his daughter Manar al-Sana, and wrote to Nur al-Huda, saying, "I commit her case to thee, and give thee command over her life. So if the matter be as thou sayest, kill her without consulting me." When the queen had received and read her father's letter, she sent for Manar al-Sana, and they set before her the prisoner, drowned in her own blood, and pinioned with her hair, shackled with heavy iron shackles, and clad in haircloth. And they made her stand in the presence abject and abashed. When she saw herself in this condition of passing humiliation and exceeding abjection, she called to mind her former high estate, and wept with sore weeping, and recited these 2 couplets. O Lord, my foes are fain to slay me in despite, nor deem I any wise to find escape by flight. I have recourse to thee to annul what they have done. Thou art the asylum, Lord, of fearful supplicant wight. Then wept she grievously till she fell down in a swoon, and presently coming to herself, repeated these two couplets. Troubles familiar with my heart are grown, and I with them, ere shunning for the generous, are sociable still. Not one mere kind alone of woe doth leisure with me lie. Praise be God, there are with me thousands of kinds of ill. And also these, oft times mischance shall straiten noble breast, with grief whence issue is for him to shape. But when meseems straightest tightest seem, they loose, though deemed I ne'er to find escape. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 820th night, she pursued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Queen Nur al-Huda ordered into the presence her sister Princess Manar al-Sana, they set her between her hands, and she, pinioned as she was, recited the verses aforesaid. Then the queen sent for a ladder of wood, and made the eunuchs lay her on her back, with her arms spread out, and bind her with cords thereto, after which she bared her head, and wound her hair around the ladder rungs, and indeed all pity for her was rooted out from her heart. When Manar al-Sana saw herself in this state of abjection and humiliation, she cried out and wept, but none succored her. Then said she to the queen, O my sister, how is thy heart hardened against me? Hast thou no mercy on me, nor pity on these little children? But her words only hardened her sister's heart, and she insulted her, saying, O wanton, O harlot, Allah hath no ruth on whoso sueth for thee. How should I have compassion on thee, O traitress? Replied Manar al-Sana, who lay stretched on the ladder, I appeal from thee to the Lord of the heavens concerning that wherefore thou revilest me, and wherefore I am innocent. By Allah, I have done no whoredom, but I am lawfully married to him, and my Lord knoweth, and I speak sooth or not. Indeed, my heart is wroth with thee by reason of thine excessive hard-heartedness against me. How canst thou cast at me the charge of harlotry without knowledge? But my Lord will deliver me from thee. And if that whoredom whereof thou accusest me be true, may he presently punish me for it. Quoth Nur al-Huda, after a few moments of reflection, How durst thou speak me thus? And rose and beat her till she fainted away. Whereupon they sprinkled water on her face till she revived, and in truth, her charms were wasted for excess of beating, and the straitness of her bonds, and the sore insults she had suffered. Then she recited these two couplets. If aught I sinned in sinful way, or done ill deed and gone astray, the past repent I, and I come to you for your pardon pray. When Nur al-Huda heard these lines, her wrath redoubled, and she said to her, Wilt speak before me in verse, O whore, and seek to excuse thyself for the mortal sins thou hast sinned? 'Twas my desire that thou shouldest return to thy husband, that I might witness thy wickedness and matchless brazen-facedness, for thou gloriest in thy lewdness and wantonness and mortal heinousness. Then she called for the palm stick, and when as she brought the jarrod, she arose, and bearing arms to elbows, beat her sister from head to foot, after which she called for the whip of plaited thongs, wherewith if one smote an elephant, it would start off at full speed, and came down therewith on her back and her stomach, and every part of her body, till she fainted. When the old woman Shawahai saw this, she fled forth from the queen's presence, weeping and cursing her. But Nur al-Huda cried out to her eunuch, saying, Fetch her to me. So they ran after her, and seizing her, brought her back to the queen, who bade throw her on the ground, and making them lay hold of her, rose and took the whip with which she beat her, till she swooned away, when she said to her waiting woman, Drag this ill-omened bedlam forth on her face, and put her out. And they did as she bade. So far concerning them. But as regards Hassan, he walked on beside the river in the direction of the desert, distracted, troubled, and despairing of life, and indeed he was dazed and knew not night from day for stress of affliction. He ceased not faring on thus till he came to a tree whereto he saw a scroll hanging. So he took it and found writing on it, and he read these couplets. When in thy mother's womb thou wast, I cast thy case the bestest best, and turned her heart to thee, so she fostered thee on fondest breast. We will suffice thee in whate'er shall cause thee trouble or unrest. We'll aid thee in thine enterprise, so rise and bow to our behest. When he had ended reading the scroll, he made sure of deliverance from trouble and of winning reunion with those he loved. Then he walked forward a few steps and found himself alone in a wild and perilous wold, wherein there was none to company with him, upon which his heart sank within him for horror and loneliness, and his side muscles they trembled for that fearsome place, and he recited these couplets. O Zephyr of morn, and thou pass where the dear ones dwell, bear greeting of lover whoever in long loning wones, and tell them I'm pledged to yearning and pawn to pine, and the might of my passion, all passion of lovers unthrones. Their sympathies haply shall breathe in a breeze like thee, and quicken forthright this framework of rotting bones. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease the telling of this tale for today, until it be morrow.